I only see one of my Metta Lodge friends here, so I assume the rest are missing. Because they said they are coming and they were asking for instructions. So that means they are somewhere between Vivo City and here now. Because when they ask me, how do we come? I say, you take the MRT, you get out of Vivo City, you come out of Vivo City, you come on a bus which goes west, stop 1 kilometer and cross the road. So since they are not here, it means they are somewhere out there in the road. All right, I hope they will reach here soon. Now, actually these 3 talks forms a series. It summarizes in these 3 evenings what I am trying to share at Metta Lodge this whole year. Metta Lodge I teach every Thursday night. So this whole year is dedicated to this. So in 3 evenings, you're going to have a summary of what I have taught partially and will be teaching till the end of this year in Metta Lodge. And the 3 of them are, of course, connected. That's why I was hoping that the people who come will be able to attend all 3 nights, because these 3 sessions are connected. The understanding of one leads to the understanding of the other. All right? And there will be very little drama or video clips or things like that, because this is a pretty serious topic, so it will be mostly words. Okay? I just want a show of hands as to how many people in this room I have the great honor of meeting for the first time. First time, okay. Brother Vincent, please give them a book. Yeah. All those first time, please raise your hand. You get a present from me. Tomorrow, if you bring a friend, you will get 2 presents. Is Sister Betty Salim here? Betty Salim from Indonesia? Because there's a Sister Betty Salim who says she's coming from Indonesia. Okay. Yeah, some more. And more in my car. Don't worry, there's some more in my car. When I crossed customs today, the man at customs insisted I show him my invoice. I said, these are free books. There's no invoice for free books. He insists. Then he called his officer. And the officer asked me to open it up. So I opened it up and I showed it. I said, look, this is me. I said. And you look at the back, it says not for sale. So there's no invoice. And then the second officer probably thought I'm a bit mad, who will write a book and give out for free. And he said, okay, you go. Okay? All right, good. Don't worry, I've got more in my car if you need it. So we're going to begin today with very fundamental things first. And these fundamental things are important because we have to understand them very clearly. And even within any school of Buddhism, even within Theravada Buddhism, thank you, Jenny, there's lots of things which are factual and based on records. There are also lots of things which are non-factual and based on legends, mythologies, etc. So this is a generation which is different from the older generation where people accept things at face value. Nowadays, people want, whatever you say, can you show me the evidence? Can you show me the records? Or can you show me where, on what basis do you say this? So this is even more so if you are teaching. Because if you are a teacher and you say certain things and then somebody checks it up and comes back and asks you and you are unable to provide things to back up what you say, then you lose credibility. So I would like to begin by a very simple question. Who is the Buddha? And every one of us in this room have a different impression of the Buddha. based on our cultural background, based on what we have been told, or based on what we see in temple paintings, based on legends, movies, YouTubes, etc. So it is actually quite important for us to first be very clear, who is the Buddha? Who is this man that you and I call the Buddha? And we are mostly familiar with the iconography, but please remember, this is just an icon. I'm very sure the Buddha doesn't look like that. In the first place, in the Nikayas, he is described as bald, just like any other monk. So certainly what you see at the top does not reflect what the Buddha would have looked like. And I'm here going to start off with some things which might actually shock you all. But that's what my purpose is. I'm not here to say nice things and make you feel happy. But I want to say things which are true. And the first thing is, many of the stories that we learn as children or in temples are myths, legends. They are based on biographies of the Buddha, which were written hundreds of years after he has passed away. Now, most of you would be familiar with the story that, oh, he is a prince and Vesak Day is coming. Many of you, again, will be familiar with the story that he is a prince, his father is a king, King Suddhodana. Now, the first thing I want to be clear is that if you check your history books, there is no such kingdom. So we have to be very careful with what we say. Legends are legends, but truth has to be put in place too. Those of you will be familiar with his caste. Does he come from the nobility? No, he does not come from the nobility. He comes from the warrior caste. So doesn't that strike you as something which is different? How come the legends say, oh, his father is a king and he's a prince, and yet he is not of the nobility? He comes from the warrior caste. Well, the reality is that there is no such kingdom. Where Kapilavastu is, where you visit today as Lumbini, is actually a protectorate of the nation of Kosala. Kosala was the big, big nation to the west. Its king is King Pasenadi, same age as the Buddha. And where Kapilavastu, where Lumbini is, where you all visit, it's just a tiny little corner on the far east end of the kingdom. Quite an insignificant corner. And that little corner is a protectorate of Kosala. And they govern themselves by electing a council. So his father is actually like the chief minister of that council which governs this small little place whereby the capital is Kapilavastu. And if you look at the Buddha's own words, when he was asked, who is he? He said, and I read, there is a prosperous country, sire, and vigorous, right up against the foothills of the Himalaya. That's where you saw when you went on pilgrimage. It is inhabited by Kosalans. Because remember, we are talking about the kingdom of Kosala, King Pasenadi of Kosala. It is inhabited by Kosalans, whose race is named after the sun, whose lineage is Sakyan. Now, the Sakyans, including our Buddha, is a Kosalan. He is part of this big kingdom governed by King Pasenadi of Kosala. And there are at least 2 times in the Nikayas where the Buddha actually introduced himself as a Kosalan. So that is one. So while we celebrate and talk about, oh, how this man is the prince, etc., that prince is actually very much mythology. His father was like the chief minister of a Malayan state. Okay? And the word Raja, for those of you who know Malay, does not mean necessarily king. Huh? I have friends who are called Raja. Okay? It doesn't mean they're king. You've got plenty of Indian friends called Raja. Are they kings? All right? Now, so this is what I mean. We have to be able to separate what is real in the Nikayas, and here I'm referring to Anguttara Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, and Digha Nikaya. Anguttara Nikaya is the numerical discourses. Then you have the Samyutta, the collections. Then the Majjhima, the middle length, and Digha, the long. Within even the Nikayas, there's a lot of editing. If you look at Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, there's a lot of editing. If you go on to Anguttara, you will find that there's far less editing. So we have to admit that even within the Nikayas, there are lots of editing. Vesak Day is coming, as I said. We're all familiar with another story of how this prince left in the middle of the night, looked at his wife with his newborn son, and then had this miraculous horse which could jump over walls and rivers and all that. Is that real? I mean, 100 years ago, people might have accepted that as a very entertaining story. But to the critical mind, like my good friend posing today, would that be real? That sounds a bit incredulous. Horses which can jump over high walls of a city, that's a bit incredulous. That's what I call a Steven Spielberg effect. What is actually recorded in the Nikayas, and this is from Majjhima Nikaya 26, and I'll read it to you. Sister there, please there. I'll read to you what happened on the night of renunciation, or the day of renunciation. The Buddha said, later, while still young, a black-haired boy blessed with youth, in the first phase of life, I shaved off my hair and beard. Though my mother and father wished otherwise and grieved with tearful faces, I put on the yellow robe and went forth from house life into homelessness. This is a very down-to-earth scenario. Nothing dramatic. No Steven Spielberg. Of a young man who was determined to learn, to seek the truth, and his parents literally begging him, crying, not to go. And he insisted, shaved his head, shaved his beard, and left home. And that's a very human thing. That's a very, very human thing. My image of the Buddha, my teacher, is of a man very much like you and me, who suffered pains, backaches, headaches, etc. But he was a very brilliant man with an amazingly sharp mind. But he was a man. And if you look at the Nikayas, Brother Posing, you will be very, very, very happy, Brother Posing, to realize that there are hardly any miracles. Hardly any. A miracle that is so beloved of all of you here, when you hear of how the Buddha after Enlightenment went back to visit his hometown of Kapilavastu, and how you have that double fire, one side water, one side rising above. It's not in the canon at all. That is in the legends. There is no such record in the canon, which makes me very happy, which makes Brother Posing very happy. Because when I read those miracles, I said, they don't sound right. It sounds very much like blatant advertisement, but it doesn't sound right to me. So my image of a Buddha, my teacher, is of a man who, like you and me, suffered frustrations and pains, suffered illnesses, made wrong turns in his training, and finally correcting himself. He is a man, just like you and me, and I think that's absolutely important. Because if he is not a man, then what he did to make himself enlightened would be something you and I cannot follow. Oh, my Metalodge gang is here, wonderful. I was worried that they are walking somewhere between Vivo City and here. So that they are here, I'm very happy. So let them sit down first. Please sit down. So, how much of a man is he? Even after his enlightenment, did he walk around with light going out of his head, floating? Or did he walk like you and me? Again, to me, that's very important, because I'm trying to figure how he would have looked like as he taught, as he lived 2,600 years ago. And I'm going to read you now a canonical passage. Canonical means with reference to the four Nikayas. I'm going to read to you now a canonical passage. Here, the Buddha was looking for three of his students, three venerables, who were in retreat in a forest. So he actually walked into this park to look for these three venerables. And I will read it out to you. Then the Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, encouraged the Venerable Bhagu with talk on the Dhamma, then after which he got out of his seat and he left for the eastern bamboo park. The Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Nandiya, the Venerable Kimbila were living there in this park at that time. The park keeper saw the Blessed One coming. He told him, do not go into this park, monk. There are three clansmen living there, seeking their own good. Do not disturb them. The Venerable Anuruddha heard the park keeper speaking to the Blessed One. He told the park keeper, friend park keeper, do not keep the Blessed One out. It is our own teacher, the Blessed One, who has come. Now, if the man is coming to you floating, with light coming out of his head, robes flowing, and you are the park keeper, you very likely run for your life. You will not be the one who stand there and say, do not disturb my three venerables. Please stay away. You are disturbing them. He tells me. He's as human as you and me walking into there. That another person cannot even recognize that he is the Buddha. All right? Please remember, in those days there was no television that went and said, this is the Buddha. So they will have no idea how he looked like. Okay? Now I'm going to read you another one more. Even more shocking. Now, this is at the time when the Buddha was walking alone with his attendant. And this was earlier, so Ananda was not his attendant. This was another person who is his attendant. Thus I heard, at one time the Blessed One was journeying through the Kosalan country with the Venerable Nagasamala as his attendant monk. On the way, the Venerable Nagasamala saw a fork in the road. He said to the Blessed One, Lord, this is the way. Let us go that way. When this was said, the Blessed One said, this is the way, Nagasamala. Let us go this way. A second and third time, the Venerable Nagasamala said the same thing and received the same answer. Guess what he did? Then he put the Blessed One bow and outer robe on the ground and departed. As he went along the way, robbers appeared and robbed him. And they beat him up. Now, this is again what I mean. This is the teacher. This is his attendant. Now, again, if this teacher is some godlike divine figure with miraculous powers doing this, he say jump, you say how high. But no, that is not what is recorded. What is recorded is very clear. This was a man who is just like any other teacher in your school trying to teach you, despite him being very wise. And now and then you got people like that who will say, no, I disagree with you. Rather rudely, in fact, to the teacher. So what I'm trying to say is, who is my teacher, the Buddha? My teacher, the Buddha, is a man. And it is very important that he is a man, because he is a man, he walked this path, and he became enlightened. You and I can also walk on his footprints, and you and I can similarly become awakened. Actually, the word enlightenment is not a very accurate translation. Awakening would probably be better. If he is a superhuman being who has done things like Superman, then we are not able to follow it. But because he is a man, very wise, very brilliant, we can do it. And now I'm going to end this first part of Legends versus Canonical Records and Who is My Teacher, the Buddha, by telling you something which is even going to shock you more. Vesak Day is coming. We're all familiar with the four sights, right? We're all familiar of how he supposedly did not see any man who is sick, did not see anything which had died, and similarly did not probably forsake himself until he saw a sick man, a dead man, okay, until he saw a monk, until he saw a very old person. Now, again, back to us. Think. Is it logical that you can live to 29 years old and never seen anything grow old, fall sick, die? Is it logical? Yeah, you may not have seen a American. But is it logical that you have never seen somebody grow old? Surely you would have seen his parents grow old. Surely his goldfish in the pond would have died at some time. Right? But we still share that same story and we tell everybody, oh, we never saw that. Do you know that that story is a complete cut and paste? There is no canonical record of the Buddha, our Buddha, ever having had that. But he did mention that there was a past Buddha who awoke when he saw this. And along the way, as the legends and the stories of the biographies of the Buddha were written, that became cut and paste and became the story that you and I are so familiar with. Now, I say this because our students now are bright. So if we continue telling our students this, and one fine day one of them just consult Professor Google and ask you back, Sister Eileen, you told me this. Where in the canon is it? You got nothing to show. You lose credibility. What is in the canon is not about the Buddha. Similarly, the story of the dancing girls at night, how they all got lying on the floor, saliva coming out, blah, 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 and how the person observing became so disgusted. That story is in the canon, but it does not describe our Bodhisattva. It describes the first lay person the Buddha taught, Yasa. That story was cut and pasted onto the night our Bodhisattva renounced. So when you look at this, you see a lot of editing work. People trying to dramatize it, and even without a computer, they successfully cut and paste to make it more dramatic. So why I'm saying this is, the Buddha, my teacher, is a man, a very wise man, but he certainly didn't float on the air or have light coming out of his head with his robes always flowing. No, he was a man, just like you and me, who knew a tremendous amount about the realities of life. And he spent 45 years walking from place to place, teaching people, not trying to start a new religion, not trying to start anything new, but trying to help people lead a more noble life. That's why he's called the Noble Path. He wanted all of you to be better people. He didn't ask any one of you to be a Buddhist. In fact, even he is not a Buddhist. The word Buddhism only appeared when the British ruled Sri Lanka and created a word called Buddhism. Because as far as the British were concerned, you have to be classified as something. And so Buddhism became created. And Buddhists became a new category of people. The Buddha didn't want anyone else to be anything. He just wanted us to be better, to know the realities of life, and to live life not going against realities, but in tune with the harsh realities, so that you can have less dukkha. Now, I'm going to share now what happened at his enlightenment. What happened at his enlightenment? That's very important, because that is what we are similarly trying to attain. Now, we are all familiar with the story of the Enlightenment. We are all familiar with the story of how, in the first watch of the night, he looked back and he could see 91 eons of time. 91 times the universe expanded and collapsed. He saw 91 big bangs and big collapse and big bounce. And he said that's not all. There were more. Just that in that period of time, he could look back 91. That's more, he said. One big bang, big collapse is estimated to be about 30 billion years. We are a young universe. We are only about 13 billion years. So don't worry, you got 17 more billion years before the whole thing collapses into a massive black hole. But the Buddha could look back and he could see. That was the first watch of the night. In the second watch of the night, again you are familiar. He looked and he could see how the deeds of people made them what they will become. I intentionally didn't want to use the word karma, because when you use the word karma, K-A-M-M-A, people immediately start thinking of something mystical, something almost out of this world. But it is not. When were you born? So let's say you're born in 1945 or you're born in 1955. And let's say you died in the year 2035. So we will write 1955-2035, the year Mr. So-and-so was born and the year Mr. So-and-so died. But what is the most important in this sequence? Not the year he was born, not the year he died, but the dash in between. That is your karma. That dash is your karma. Everything that you have done from here to here is in that one little dash. And that is your karma. So whether you have studied hard and went on to be a professional, or whether you played a fool and ended up in some other thing, is all created by us, by the decisions that we keep on making at every step along the way. And in the second watch of the night, the Buddha saw how people became what they were because of their karma. Now, the first and the second watch of the night basically deals with trying to explain how cause and effect give rise to what we are. Cause and effect giving to the external world, the internal world. The third watch of the night, if we are to ask most people, they will say, oh, in the third watch of the night, he discovered the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Actually, that is not accurate. What happened in the third watch of the night? Actually, in the third watch of the night, when the Buddha's mind was thus purified, I inclined my mind to the knowledge of the exhaustion of taints. These are the defilements. The old books translated it as taints, T-A-I-N-T-S. The newer books would translate it as the defilements. The third watch of the night was actually when the Buddha realized how you could end your defilements. The third watch of the night begins with the Buddha inclining his mind to the knowledge of the end of the defilements. Then, with that came the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So, what are these defilements? These defilements are very, very important. These defilements are what every one of us have. These defilements are what you wish to end every time you offer food to the Sangha. When you chant, Idam me punya asavakaya waham hontu. What is asava? Defilements. Every time you offer, you say, by the merits of these good deeds, may I have the opportunity that will lead to the end of my defilements. Because when you say the end of the defilements, you're literally looking at the third watch of the night, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and walking the Eightfold Path. So what are the defilements? I'm just going to write it down. retreat on top of a hill outside Jakarta called Puncak. I was there, so he can't deny it. He was told at that meditation retreat that when you sit in meditation and you close your eyes and you look at your own mind, nicely breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and then when is dinner? A spontaneous thought will come. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. Completely normal to have thoughts. Or, wow, is it too hot or too cold? Whatever. So we all got asavas pushing our mind towards sensual delights. Becoming or bhava asava is, oh, what I'm going to do in half an hour? What would I be in half an hour? What am I going to do next day? We're always thinking of, what am I going to do? The next one is ignorance or views, wrong views. So these are like what is called fermentations. You will read in Thanisaro's translation, he uses fermentations. And you will see it like bubbling, like boiling soup, blah, 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 blah. Every now and then one will come out. And this is exactly what you will see when you close your eyes in meditation. Every now and then one of it will bubble out, blah, 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 blah. Either sensual or what am I going to do? What am I going to become? What will I do when I finish this meditation? What am I going to be? Or something based on views or based on ignorance. Now the Buddha made it very clear that it is the end of the defilements which is what he seeked in the third watch of the night. And he knew that you can only end these defilements if you can have the wisdom of the mind and the purity of the life that you led. And that led on to the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. That is only one aspect of the awakening. The awakening experience has actually three aspects. And all three aspects is described in the canon, in the Nikayas. So this first aspect is the one that most of us are familiar with. The first watch, the second watch, and the third watch. First watch, as I said, looking backwards. Second watch, looking at how the deeds that we do make us become what we are. And the third watch, how to get out. So if you look at this first aspect of the enlightenment experience, the first and second watches is telling us, explaining us, or clarifying to us that as long as we do not get out, you're going to follow this repeated process. Okay? The mic has stopped. Okay, back again. To get out, you need the third watch. What was done in the third watch? What was realized or discovered in the third watch? Now, what do you think is the second aspect of the enlightenment experience? The enlightenment experience is like if I look at a house, I can see it from the front, I can see it from the side, I can see it from the top. So these are the various aspects of the enlightenment experience. Okay? The second aspect of the enlightenment experience is that aspect of paticca samuppada. Understanding that all things are not based on a divine being, that all things are not predetermined by fate or caste or birth, and that neither are things completely without cause, that means completely random, but that things depend on cause and effect, cause and effect. The second aspect of the enlightenment experience is that of paticca samuppada, dependent origination. And while dependent origination, cause and effect might sound relatively straightforward to us today, please remember it took modern science only at the 17th century, the 1600s, to realize that everything is cause and effect. Okay? The Buddha predated them by 2,000 years. So, the understanding of paticca samuppada is very, very important. On the night of the Enlightenment, the Buddha went through his understanding of dependent origination. And after his Enlightenment, one of the first week, at the end of that, one of the first things he reflected again was dependent origination. Dependent origination is so important that the understanding of dependent origination, the Buddha said, though very complex, is literally enlightenment. Now, is dependent origination related to the Four Noble Truths? Yeah. The first Noble Truth is the effect. The second Noble Truth is the cause. The third Noble Truth is the effect. The fourth Noble Truth is the cause. Okay? The first Noble Truth is the truth of Dukkha. The second Noble Truth, the cause of Dukkha. The third Noble Truth, a state whereby there is no Dukkha. The fourth Noble Truth, how do you go to this state whereby there is no Dukkha? So the first Noble Truth is effect. Second Noble Truth is cause. Third Noble Truth is effect. Fourth Noble Truth is cause. Dependent origination is literally the second Noble Truth in detail, explained in great detail, which we will be doing. So, what is the third aspect of the Enlightenment experience? The third aspect of the Enlightenment experience is also equally important. The third aspect of the Enlightenment experience is the Enlightenment experience with regards to the 5 khandhas, or the 5 aggregates, or in Chinese, Wu Yin. The realization that you are just a process, that you are not your body, this physical body, that you, inverted comma, is not your feeling, your perception, your volition, or your consciousness, that you are just a ceaselessly flowing process, which is basically what science tells us, that you are just a lump of energy that keeps on going, transforming, that there is no you that is permanent, you that can be defined inside there, but that you are just a process of energy ceaselessly changing and going on and on, that we identify as Brother Eddie. Okay? Now, all the 3 aspects of the Enlightenment experience are important. The third aspect of the Enlightenment experience is realizing that these 5 khandhas are just temporary states held together that we identify as our ego, as our self, as our identity. If you can truly understand anatta, you are at the door of awakening. So, I've gone through the first question, who is my teacher, the Buddha? I have explained, illustrated from the canon, that he is a man like you and me, but a very brilliant man, an absolutely brilliant psychologist. I have explained legends versus canonical records. I have explained to you what happened at his awakening. We are all familiar with the first aspect. We have probably also have heard of dependent origination. We also have heard of the 5 khandhas, but we are unaware that they are actually aspects of that same enlightenment experience. All right? Now, the next question I'm going to address is, what are truths? We are talking about first noble truth, second noble truth, third noble truth, fourth noble truth. We are talking about the truth of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So what are truths? Okay, what is the truth? You can have truths and truths. Something that is a truth must hold true in space and time. That means to say, if this statement is a truth, you can apply the same statement 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and it will still be true. You bring it forward 1,000 years, it will still be true. You bring it to a different locality, it will still be true. Whether in China, Africa, wherever. So a truth must hold true irrespective of space and time. So, let me illustrate. My grandfather had 3 wives. I came from the second grandmother, who had 12 children. Bless the woman. 12 children. We had 1 football team and an extra. Now, on top of that, the grandfather had a 3rd wife. And on top of that, I am told that he supported half the brothel industry of Kuala Lumpur. Single-handedly. So I've got a lot of relatives that I have completely no idea who they are. But did he do anything wrong at his time? Did the grandmother say, why you do this, why you have so many wives? No, nobody even made a sound. It was considered as completely his right, acceptable. Mind you, the man came from China alone, you know. Imagine if he had brought his whole clan, he would probably conquer the country or something. He came alone. But did he do anything wrong at his time? No. Nobody even blinked an eye. He was considered perfectly acceptable. Now fast forward, if he's alive today looking at me, he will say, you pathetic fella. What did you do wrong? That same thing today will be completely unacceptable. So it is not a truth that a man can have 3 wives and support half the brothels of Kuala Lumpur. It may be true during his time, but it is not true now. So that is not a truth. But if I were to tell you that all things are ceaselessly changing, that they are impermanent, whether you go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, it is truth. Whether you go forward 1,000 years, it is also true. Okay? And whether you go to China or Hong Kong or Malaysia or Singapore or South Africa, it is also true. So that is the truth. So we have to realize, what do we mean when you say this is a noble truth? That means it must hold true everywhere. So, now we come to Dukkha. The first noble truth is the noble truth of Dukkha. Why is it the very first truth? Why don't we just hide such an embarrassing fact at the back? You know, most of the time we don't want to hide things which are not nice to see in the front. No, it is actually very important that the first noble truth is the noble truth of Dukkha. Look at this hall. Do you see many, many teens in this hall? Is there anyone in this hall below the age of 20? 1, very good. 2, anyone else? Not many. So you are in the less than 1% minority, but don't really respect your rights. Why? Why such a few number of people below 20? Well, that's because it is only when you see dukkha that you will want to walk the Buddhist path. If you have got absolutely no vision of dukkha or no experience of dukkha, there's no need to walk the Buddhist path. Now here, we have to realize that in today's age, our children, my children, your children, they're all very lucky. When they have dukkha, they just transfer it to their parents. If and when the parents can solve it, with money or with whatever, the parents will solve it. So if it is solved, then there's no dukkha. Okay, I have friends who tell me, I'm very scared when my son calls me. Every time he calls me means I'm sure something. So that is one of the reasons why in most Buddhist societies, those attending serious talks like that, you will find that every one of them would have had experience some form of dukkha that makes them want to see what is this fellow going to talk about with regards to dukkha? How do I end dukkha? Now here, it is important for us to realize that dukkha is actually an impetus that will push us to either do something or do nothing. And I read to you what the Buddha said. What is the ripening of dukkha? When someone is overcome and his mind is obsessed by dukkha, either he sorrows and laments, and beating his breast, he weeps and becomes distraught, or else he undergoes a search externally. Who is there that knows one word, 2 words for the cessation of dukkha? I say that dukkha either ripens in confusion or in search. For you in this room, that dukkha that you had ripened in search. That's why you are here. For many people, like many of my students, whenever they have dukkha, they cover up that dukkha with a big blanket of sensual gratification. So you're not happy, oh, I didn't do well in the exam, oh, never mind, this Friday night we go karaoke. All right? You literally whitewash it with a layer of sensual gratification. And when you are at that age, it's okay. You whitewash it, you don't see it, that's it. But as you grow older, you realize that that is not the solution. We become more realistic. You will realize that I kept on using the word dukkha. I did not use any other word besides dukkha. And that reason is because the first noble truth, dukkha satcha, is such a profound truth that there is no proper English word that can actually translate it. I have given some notes to Sister Jenny to forward to you all. All right? This is homework to help you understand a little bit better. But the word dukkha is very, very often translated as suffering. Actually, that is only partially correct, and it gives rise to a lot of confusion. For example, when I was a very young child, maybe 9 or 10 years old, those days we still have religious classes in school, believe it or not. So you learn a little bit about Buddhism, Christianity, whatever. Just introduce you to the basics. We were a very open country then. Okay. And so when I learned about Buddhism, and of course it's in English, and it says, the Buddha said, the first noble truth, all life is suffering. Then they look around me. Not too bad, Okay, I got food to eat, I got clothes to wear, I can play with my friends. Not so bad, But did the Buddha say all life is suffering? The Buddha did not say all life is suffering. He said it's dukkha. He didn't say it's suffering, but he said it's dukkha. But he did not say it's suffering. So to say all life is suffering or life is suffering is a gross misrepresentation of the Buddha's teachings. Because the Buddha even classified the types of happiness. You've got mundane happiness, you've got the happiness of the jhanas, and you've got supramundane happiness. So there is lots of happiness. He never denied that. All right? So, dukkha is a very, very broad word. And the early translators, including Rice Davies, etc., some of them use the word ill, I-L-L. Others use the word anguish. And others use the word unpleasant. And others use the words imperfection, unsatisfactoriness, liability to suffering, etc., etc., etc. What it basically means is that suffering is only one aspect of dukkha. Dukkha is a very big term that includes, in modern terms, emo. My students say emo. Why are you behaving like that today? Emo law. I had to go back and search my dictionary. What does that mean, But that's dukkha. Okay, frustration, that's dukkha. Of course, real physical suffering is dukkha. So, dukkha is a very, very, very big word that means many, many things. And when you hear that famous 3 lines where the Buddha said, okay, sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta. This is the truth. Sabbe means all. Sabbe sankhara anicca. Sankhara is again a very big compound word, but in this context it means conditioned things. Things which comes together because of conditions. Like this building is here because of many, many things that props it up. Okay? Your car, your body, everything is a conditioned phenomena. All conditional phenomena are impermanent because the things which made it that will change. So it will change. So that's the truth. Even your diamond ring, if left long enough, will turn to carbon. I hope you realize that. Okay? Sabbe sankhara dukkha. That dukkha is not bang, suffering. It doesn't mean that word suffering. That dukkha means because these are impermanent, conditioned phenomena, they are unreliable, they are imperfect, they are unsatisfactory. But it doesn't mean suffering. Sabbe dhamma anatta. Dhamma means literally everything. This dhamma is small d, not the big D. Big D means, like the word dhamma, the Buddha's teaching. When it's written as small d, it means all phenomena, conditioned and unconditioned. Literally everything. Sabbe dhamma anatta. All things are, anatta translated traditionally as not self. Modern words, non-substantial or impersonal. Okay? So, these 3 lines are very important because they tells you what is both within and external to us. Then what is suffering? What is dukkha? In the First Noble Truth, you will remember the Buddha specified. He actually classified for us what is dukkha. All right? Remember what the Buddha said. This is the Noble Truth of dukkha. And what is dukkha? Birth, aging, sickness, and death, he said, is dukkha. Every one of you in this room can relate to that. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair is dukkha. Every one of you here can relate to that. Association with the dislike, separation from the light, not getting what you desire, and grasping to the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, is dukkha. You may relate to half of it. The last line you may not relate. So the Buddha was actually very specific. Any woman who has given birth in this room will know, birth is dukkha. The men may not understand, but every woman in this room will know, birth is dukkha. All right? Everyone who is getting old will know aging is dukkha. Sickness is dukkha. Sister Jenny texted me this morning, asked me, I want to sit on the cushion or sit on the chair. I said, please let me sit on the chair. My knees are painful. So I'm going to again show you something. It's actually something that you are familiar with, but you may not realize it. So what did I say is dukkha? We said birth, aging, sickness. Forgive my writing, doctor's writing. See, doctors write a lot. Every time patient talk, we write. And patients talk very fast. After 30 years, your writing will become like that. That's 1. 2, sorrow, lamentation, pain, pain, grief, despair. Third one, association with dislike, dissociation with the light, not getting what you want, and finally, clinging to the 5 aggregates. So, in the first noble truth, this is very, very broadly classified. Of course, it is not all encompassing. I'm sure you can think of some more dukkha. Okay? It is not all encompassing, but it is a broad classification. How many of you can tell me what is this first group the Buddha called? This is dukkha, dukkhata. This is the pain of physical suffering that every one of us, as you grow old, as you mature, as you forsake, will suffer. None can escape it. Even the Arahant and the Buddha had to undergo aging, sickness, and finally the pain of a deceased body. The second one? Yes, I heard a sound. Viparinama dukkha. This is the pain that results from ceaseless change. So the people you fall in love with, forsake, die. The people you fall in love with, people who are close to you, your children, your descendants, wherever, accidents, all kinds of things happen. Okay? And the third one, sankhara dukkhata. This is the psychological pain that we inflict on ourselves. This is the most important aspect because this we can learn to change. This we learn to adapt when we see the truth. This, of course, it still hurts. Nobody is saying it doesn't hurt, but we have the ability with wisdom to lessen it. The Buddha said that there are always these 2 arrows. The first arrow, pew, cannot be helped. As long as you have this body and mind, you are going to suffer the things associated with the body and mind of aging, sickness, death. The first arrow is inevitable. As long as you have family, social, relationship, friends, you are also going to have the second because close to you, people will fall sick, etc., etc. But he said the second arrow is the arrow that we don't want to inflict because the second arrow is the psychological pain that we can try our best to lessen. And of course, the third arrow is the arrow of psychological pain. So this is in the first noble truth. So it is not that all life is suffering. There are lots of happiness in life. It is that these happiness are also a nature. These happiness are also changing. I'm going to show you one slide now, if I know where it is, because I sent it to Sister Jenny and I have no idea where she kept it. But let me show you one slide. Jenny, where is the slide, if you have an idea? Let me find the slide. Nope, not here. Let me shrink this. Where is my slide? Dukkha. Do you see a dukkha anywhere? Where's the slide? Here. Slide. Ah. No, this one. Yeah, okay. Oops, what did I do? Okay. Thank you, Jenny. So if you look at this, Brother Posing, you'll be very interested to know this is a British GSCE course on Buddhism for students sitting for O-level exam in Buddhism. I plagiarize it shamelessly from the syllabus, but since the Buddha didn't copyright it, it's okay. Now, if you look at this, I was very impressed because the British kids are trying to learn this and sit for their O-levels, when we who call ourselves Buddhists can barely understand half of it. But if you look at this, in here, the poor kids, the Angmo kids, are trying to learn what the Buddha taught about dukkha. And so you see the three characteristics that I told you: anicca, anatta, dukkha. Here they're still translating it, for lack of a better word, suffering. Can't blame them. It's become so conventional. But as told you, even within the word dukkha, you have the word anicca and anatta, because impermanence and non-substantiality itself contributes to dukkha, as is illustrated here. All right? So when we talk about dukkha, impermanence, because everything changes, even happy events, sukha, within it, can change to become dukkha. Happy events will end. No birthday party lasts forever. And of course, anatta is a very interesting concept, very interesting teaching, which is crucial to awakening. Don't worry, we'll spend a lot of time talking about it in the next 2 nights. Okay? And of course, dukkha I've already explained. Anicca. People get old, people die, things wear out, things break. Remember, when the Buddha taught, he refers not just to this, but also outside. The internal world and the external world. When the Buddha say loka, it is both this loka, which is inside my brain, and the loka, which is outside. Paticca samuppada, cause and effect, applies to both. The outside world also comes into being because of cause and effect. So people get old, people die, things wear out, things break. That's because of impermanence. That's because we are all impermanent. Okay? Anatta. People change over time. No one remains exactly the same. If you don't believe me, look at your husband. He's not the man you married, I assure you. I guarantee you he has changed. Hopefully for the better. And of course, this part, lots of people you love not getting what you want, etc., etc. Do you see this tree? This is dukkha, dukkhata. This is viparinama, dukkhata. And this is sankhara, dukkhata. When I saw this on their syllabus, I say, wow, I am sure all my methodologies will fail. I am quite sure. So you see the links between impermanence and non-self. If everything changes over time, nothing within us can ever remain the same. So as I said, your husband is not the man that you married. You married a man when he was 26 years old, young, muscular, with a whole stock of black hair, with 6 packs. Now he has one nice round pack, has white hair, and anything but muscular. He has changed. The links between anatta and dukkha, you get attached to people you like and love, and then you feel unhappy when they change. Of course, you feel happy when they change for the better. And of course, between anicca and dukkha, that's quite obvious. Okay? So this one chart summarizes very well what we are trying to share. And their exam question is, describe anicca, anatta, dukkha. Explain the links between anicca, anatta, and dukkha. O-level exam. Not bad, I say. No wonder many of the European people are becoming Buddhists. If they can answer this, I tell you, they are very good. They are excellent. Okay? In fact, if we have time, I have got the teaching video for this, of how they teach their secondary school students on this. I've actually got it in my computer, if we have time. So, now, coming back to, let's not get distracted, dukkha. Okay. So suffering, as I said, is only one aspect of dukkha. It has got many, many aspects, and the Buddha very broadly classified for us in the First Noble Truth all these various aspects that you see, and even sukha, which is happiness, has dukkha within it because of the nature of impermanence and non-self. Okay? So they are all three interlinked. Now, the last one I told you, the clinging to the five aggregates is the one which is most difficult to understand, because that involves you understanding anatta. Let's go to the very, very basic, simple thing. We said that when the Buddha realized from the awakening experience that Brother Eddie here is not a permanent Brother Eddie, but that he is a mass, a compound of energy which is continuously changing and flowing on. And that Brother Eddie, which we call, is actually not the body, nor the feeling, nor the memory, nor the perception, nor the volition, nor his consciousness. But that because these things group together, it gives us the impression that, there's Brother Eddie, solid as can be. But actually there's nothing solid about it at all. Now, we, of course, look onto this body and mind as myself. And the Buddha considered that as one of the fundamental errors which give rise to our pain. Because as long as you grasp onto this nama rupa, rupa means body, nama means the function of the mind, you are going to suffer. Now, remember I told you when he explained in the First Noble Truth, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, etc., that or the association with the ones you do not love, dissociation with the ones you love. And then finally he ended it by saying, clinging to the five aggregates is suffering. And that's because we cling to our body as ourself. We don't want it to go old. We don't want it to fall sick. And even when we die, we cling onto this body, this concept of me in there, and we refuse to let go. Similarly, we cling to our feelings as my feelings, our memory as my memory, my consciousness. And this is what the Buddha called Pancha Upadana Khanda. Pancha, five, Upadana, attaching or clinging, Khanda, aggregates. So very often it's translated as five clinging aggregates. And that's a wrong translation, because aggregates do not cling. You cling to the aggregates. Aggregates by itself is neutral. This is neutral. You cling to it, not this thing clings. Okay? So if you can understand that we are not this nama rupa, but that we are just what we think we are, the nama rupa, when in reality we are not. It is just an endless flowing biochemical process. Then you can let go. Let me put it another way. As long as you think that you are your body, you are going to die. Because that body will die. The instant you realize that you are not your body, and the day when your body dies, you don't die. Okay? In one discourse, the Buddha asked Venerable, if I remember wrongly or rightly, is Anuruddha. And he said, he's still alive now, the Buddha. He said, can you identify me with the form? And he said, no. With the feeling? No. With the perception? No. Etc., etc. And he said, even when I'm alive now, I'm not this nama rupa. What more after I am dead? Because somebody was trying to ask Anuruddha as to whether the Buddha will live after he died, but will not live after he died. Because the Buddha said both these questions are wrong. The fact that you say, will the Buddha live after he died, means you think that the Buddha is something in there which is going to live after he died. And the Buddha said, no, that is wrong. There is nothing in there which is permanent. Okay? So similarly, if you say that, oh, he's going to die, that means you are also thinking that, okay, this is the nama rupa. When the nama rupa dies, Eddie is dead. The reality, he said, is neither this extreme nor that extreme. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It merely transforms. Okay? That's why I was saying in the third night, you have to really apply our knowledge of science into the understanding of anatta. Okay? Now, psychological pain is the first one we can learn to lessen, and that is sankhara dukkha, the third one. As long as you learn how to slowly let go, then we are able to lessen that psychological pain. And again, I give examples. A very, very common example that I see in my clinic of people coming, elderly people coming with a lot of anguish and pain, is that they complain to me that their daughter-in-law is not good. So then I asked the lady, why is your daughter-in-law not good? And she said, when I married this old man sitting there very quiet, when I married this old man, I got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, now my daughter-in-law wake up at 7:30 in the morning. Doesn't do anything. Goes to work. Come back home, drop the bag and eat dinner. After that, watch television. Now, this is what I mean. She is very attached to a concept. Remember just now I told you? Defilements, one of which is our views. She is very attached to that view. And she said that as far as I'm concerned, she is no good because she's not behaving the way I expect her to behave. Then, of course, I tell her, I said, look, you were born in the 1940s. You became a daughter-in-law in the 1960s. Your daughter-in-law was not even born in 1960. She was raised in a different era. She has a different cultural thinking. She has a different education. How can you expect her to be the same as you? Obviously, she's going to be different. Obviously. All her conditioning is different. So I said, you have to learn that the world has changed. And she said, no, cannot. Then, with my Zen training, I go one step further and I said, this is a cup. You hold this cup. Hold it. I gave her my cup. Hold. Then I said, I'm going to pour hot tea into this cup. Now the tea is flowing to the top. And now it is overflowing. And I'm still pouring the hot tea. What do? I expect her to say, I let go of the cup lah. Because we always say, that's a logical thing to do, isn't it? When something is creating pain, you let it go. Why are you holding onto the cup when it's going to burn your hand? You say, no, I refuse to let go of the cup. Okay, so that explains a lot of why we have the psychological aspect of that pain, because we refuse to adapt. We refuse to change. The reality, the Buddha said, the world 是这样的了. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, 是这样的. You have to adapt to it. And the better we adapt to it, the less pain you have. Okay? The less pain we have. So we begin by adapting to the third one. Because the second and the first is more difficult, as you can well imagine yourself. Now, please remember, and I repeat, there are three things that the Buddha clearly said is wrong. One, determinism. That everything is due to a past which has determined now. That means you are fated to meet this man, marry him, and be his wife. Okay, I always tell people no. You always have a choice. You can always say no. There is no such thing as you must marry him. So this have to be taken in the Indian context of 2,600 years ago, where Brahminism was very much in vogue, and people believe in the various castes, people believe in destiny. And the Buddha said, no, you can change it. Second, God. That you believe that everything is determined by some supreme being. And the Buddha said, no, that is wrong. Third, that everything is random. The Buddha also said no. So these three things the Buddha said is not right. You can look within it yourself, don't have to believe, and you will see that this is not right. You can change every day. What you have today is, yes, what the past has given you, but you can alter it. Let me give you a very good example. The story of Angulimala is canonical. It is in the Nikayas. This is a man who murdered 999 people. By any definition, he is a serial murderer. By any definition. And he will go to jail for the rest of his life. And if there is anything called determinism, he will probably rot in hell for eternity. But what happened to Angulimala? He became an arahant. He altered what anyone here would think would be unchangeable destiny. But he changed it. By changing ignorance, he altered it. And the story of Angulimala is one story I love very, very much. Because you know that Angulimala was such a horrible serial killer. The king Pasenadi of Kosala had to bring out a whole army to go and kill him. Literally shoot to kill. But the Buddha saw that Angulimala could be taught. And so the Buddha went into the forest first against advice. And people say, don't go, that's a serial killer. But he insisted on going. And of course, you know the story. He met Angulimala. He managed to convince Angulimala. And then he brought Angulimala out. And then the king saw Angulimala, who at that time already dressed in robes. And the king gave face to Buddha. Literally give face, because Buddha said, let him be with me. And the king gave face to Buddha. And Angulimala trained under the Buddha. And every time he walked into town for alms food, what do you think happened? Do you think people will give him food? No, people threw rocks at him. So he'll come back bloodied and bruised. And the Buddha said, this is the mundane karma that you have to suffer. But what do you expect? You're a serial killer. You were a serial killer. But he very quickly learned, just like you learn in 3 nights, and became awakened. And so one day, as he was walking in town, he saw a woman with great difficulty in labor. And he didn't know what to do. He went back and asked the Buddha. And the Buddha advised him to say that since I have been born, I did not intentionally do anything wrong. By the merits of this truth, may this lady be well. At which point Angulimala protested, no, Bhante, I can't say that. How can I say that since the day I have been born, I have not done anything bad? I murdered 999 people. And the Buddha said, no. Since the day you had been born into this holy life, you had not intentionally murdered anyone. That's why I got one t-shirt which says, Reborn Buddhist. They stole our word. We already had reborn Buddhist 2,600 years ago. We should have patented it. So, by the merits of that truth, that story is very inspiring. Because I doubt any one of you in this room had killed 9 people. 9 chickens maybe, but not 9 people. So even if you have killed 9 chickens, you still can alter. So this determinism, theism, and complete randomness is what the Buddha rejected. He said, no, it is not determinism. We alter our life at every moment. And that's very scientific. He said, no, it's not due to some divine being that says you're going to go to hell or you're going to go to heaven. He said, no, that's not true. And neither, he said, is things completely random, because things are not completely random, as you yourself can obviously see. But it is the understanding that you are not your 5 khandhas that literally is the door to the end of suffering, the door to awakening. Now, here I'm going to quote one line. My good friend Jun Hyang is there, and I'm going to quote one line that he is very familiar with. And that one line is in Mandarin, so I hope you understand. But that one line fits what we have taught or shared today. It says, 观自在菩萨行胜般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄. That's all you need to know. The rest is theory. This one line is all you need to know. Because if you can walk this one line, you're going to be awakened at the end of this third day. Listen to the words. 观. What is 观? To contemplate, to look, to observe, to see very carefully. So when you want to see, you have to see something. See what? 观. 观 what? 观自. Look at yourself. 自己. So 观自己 when? Tomorrow? Yesterday? 现在. 观自在. At every moment, look at yourself. When they say look at yourself, doesn't mean, wow, my fingernail very nice. It means look there. Look at your mind. What Agachita, Venerable Agachita say, minding the mind. Okay, not what this is. 观自己现在. For what? For what? Pu comes from the word puti, which means awakening. Sa comes from the word satta. We are all sattas. We are all beings. Satta, by definition, is a being with consciousness. Any being with consciousness is a satta. So, 观自己现在 for the purpose of awakening. Okay? 观自在菩萨 行 walk. Not simply walk, but 行胜 very profoundly, very deeply. Then the next line of words got no Chinese translation. So it cannot be translated to Chinese. Just like we say dukkha cannot be translated to English. Better don't translate. Use the word dukkha. So here, Pore Poromito cannot be translated to Chinese. So it is left untranslated. Prajna is wisdom. Paramita, Brother Tan sat here and explained to you. Perfection, the highest level. So, 观自己现在菩提萨埵 walk deeply to the highest or the most profound wisdom. Prajna is wisdom. Paramita is the highest. So, when you walk to perfect and highest wisdom, what do you see? 照见. Take a torchlight and shine into a room which is dark. Then you can see. See what? 五蕴皆空. 五蕴 is the 5 aggregates or the 5 khandhas. 皆空. Kong is another word for anatta. In Pali, sunyata. That means nothing concrete, nothing substantial, nothing permanent, nothing unchangeable. So when you can see that 五蕴皆空, what is the result? 度一切苦厄. You transform all your pain and suffering. All right? Now the Buddha had always taught cause and effect in all his teachings. If you want a fan to stop, you do not put your hand up and say stop. Your hand will get cut off. If you want a fan to stop, you switch off the current. If you want your dukkha to stop, how do you stop it? You stop the cause of the dukkha. And that's the second noble truth, which explains to you what is this cause of the dukkha. Thank you. So what's the cause of this dukkha? In the second noble truth, the Buddha said our craving or our tanha. Here, you again have to understand the context in which the Buddha taught this. 2,600 years ago, there were already many schools trying to explain why. Some schools say that dukkha is external. Some schools say dukkha is internal. Some schools say dukkha is due to a god. Some schools say it's due to this, due to that. And that is why when the Buddha taught the second noble truth, when he taught about tanha or craving, he gave 3 classifications. The first one, sensual, which is easily understood by all of us. Okay? The second one, bhava, or put it in another word, eternalism. You don't want to die. You want to hear good news? What is the good news you want to hear? That good news which most people want to hear is this: that they are not going to die. They're going to live forever in some nice plateau with aircon, with sheep. And so that's what people want to hear. So being a very good salesman, I sell you what you want to hear. You know, the best salesman is the one who sells you things that you want to hear. That's why I must tell. Unfortunately, there are no young girls here, only 2 young boys. But never mind, there's still a lot of other young girls, 20 plus to 30. Why do girls put makeup? Because boys use their eyes. Why do boys lie? Because girls want to hear things that they want to hear. That's why girls put on makeup and boys lie. All right? You just got to tell the girl what she wants to hear, and there, anything goes. All right? So it's the same thing. So the Buddha said this is one of the cravings, bhava. And the third one, what you would nowadays call annihilation. That means what my medical students call, you see they have t-shirt, YOLO. So in my ignorance, I say, what is this YOLO? Doctor, you only live once, do what you want. This is the third one. So I modernize it now, YOLO. And everybody can understand. Okay, so the Buddha broadly classified craving into craving for sensual pleasures, which he said is endless. You will never find an end to the craving for sensual pleasures. No matter how much you want, you're going to have more and more and more. And the second one, the Buddha said, craving for eternalism. Actually, the Buddha is an amazing man. I mean, most of us have spent many years of our life studying what he taught. And every time you read, you still get insights into, wow, this brain is an amazing brain. This mind is an amazing mind. Even when you die, you don't want to die. This craving to go on in whatever form will give you your rebirth. Okay, and of course, YOLO now. I had great difficulty explaining the last part last time, but now I got no problem. YOLO. Oh, understand. You only live once. The Buddha said that is also wrong. So, what the Buddha says is the cause of the dukkha is our craving. But remember I told you, dependent origination is a big extension of the second noble truth. And I'm just going to summarize it. You know, in dependent origination, there are 12 links. It's a circle. So there is no first cause. The links can begin at anywhere. Please do not walk away with the impression that, ignorance is the first cause. No. Anyone can be the first cause because it's a circle. But there are a few aspects which are very important. One is the ignorance. Then The other one is craving. Then Oh, sorry. Can't see, huh? So, the important ones are ignorance, then craving, attachment, bhava, and then of course pain, suffering, old age, etc. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the key players. Because of ignorance, we behave in certain ways. Independent origination is called sankhara. Again, this word, but here this word means personality trait, behavior patterns. Okay? Because of this, we have a consciousness of a self. Could be Brother Eddie, for example. And then the next step is nama rupa. And here is a bit complicated because this nama rupa is different from the nama rupa of the 5 khandhas. So I'm not going to go into detail unless we have another class, but this nama rupa here is not the 5 khandhas of the First Noble Truth. This nama rupa refers to anything that you see, sense, perceive with your 6 sense bases. Okay, then there will be contact between the sense base and the sense object. Once there is contact, there's feeling. Once there's feeling, there's craving. And then you have attachment. And then once you have attachment, you got bhava, which is very closely related to karma because of what you have done. This gives rise to becoming. The word bhava means becoming. Then, of course, birth. So what is happening is that this scheme of event tells us that you suffer in the First Noble Truth. The reason is because of the Second Noble Truth. And the Second Noble Truth explains the causes of that suffering. One of the causes of that suffering is our ignorance. We do not see reality as what it is. In dependent origination, ignorance is defined as ignorance of the 4 Noble Truths. Okay? So because of our ignorance, we behave in certain ways. Okay? And that gives rise to our craving. You crave for certain things. Craving is for something that you haven't had yet. Attachment is you already have it, now you refuse to let go. Okay? And because of this, you are going to create the conditions for birth. Attachment, the definition in dependent origination is only 4 things. This is upadana. Upadana is what the Buddha called the fuel for samsara. It's like petrol for you to go from here to Tuas or here to Changi. It's the fuel. And the Buddha gave only 4 things that you must let go. So it is wrong if someone tell you, oh, you're a Buddhist, that means you got to let go of everything, no? No, that's wrong. There are only 4 things you have to let go. Okay, don't let go of your precepts. Don't let go of loving kindness. Don't let go of your sarong. Okay, only 4 things we let go. Okay, what are these 4 things? Of course, the first one, sensual attachments. Okay, what's the second? Anyone? Don't worry, you can guess one. Okay, I give you the last one, rites and rituals. Surprise leh. How come rites and rituals also must let go? Yes. The Buddha said even rites and rituals must let go. Because, just to give you an example, we do something so commonly like sharing of merits at the end. How many of you realize that for many of us that has become a ritual? That has become, now I share merit, what is in there for me? I offer to a monk, what is in there for me? Okay, that's why you see near exam season, a lot of people come and offer. Because they are thinking, so instead of the I being slowly let go, the I become bigger. Okay? And of course, another one is views. Remember I told you? Very, very difficult to let go of wrong views. Because if I were to tell you to let go of a wrong view, that means you say, I accept it, I let go of a wrong view. That means you're saying what I've done for the last 40 years of my life is wrong. Okay, it's very, very difficult for most people. And of course, this one is even more difficult. The delusion of a self. That's probably the most difficult to let go. So there are only these 4. The Buddha said we have to train to let go because these are the fuel, F-U-E-L, for us to continue. All right? So now, in these notes that I've given you for the first night, it deals with dukkha satcha. Okay? And I began by saying, as I've shared, that it's a very compound word, a very rather difficult word. Are the notes here? Yes. These have all been sent to you. Okay. Right. So these notes have been sent to you. I've already explained about the mistranslation and often how this gross mistranslation of life is suffering makes the Buddha's teaching so negative when in fact the Buddha's teaching is so positive. It begins with the first noble truth and it tells you there's a way to end all of it. So it's in fact the opposite. It's very, very wholesome and positive because it tells you all this can be ended. And certainly he did not say life is suffering. He said life is dukkha. He didn't say life is suffering. Okay? And of course, dukkha is a Pali word with no equivalent English word. And there are so many aspects, and I've already shared with you this. Dukkha, dukkata, viparinama, dukkata, sankhara, dukkata, etc. I've already shared that with you. Then I already shared with you about the psychological part that you have to learn to reduce. I've also shared about the self, okay, the 5 aggregates. Okay, please read that. All conditioned things are dukkha. That is true. But not all things are suffering. Okay, then we go on. And the Buddha said, I have only taught this, both formally and now. It is only dukkha that I describe. And the cessation of dukkha. Okay? So clinging to what is ceaselessly changing results in dukkha. 是这样的了, but because we want the impermanent to be permanent, we suffer. Alright? So your children are going to grow up. Let me put it to you this way, just as my children grew up. So do not expect your 15-year-old boy to be like when he was 5 years old. 5 years old, you hold his hand, you walk in Vivocity, he was very happy. 15 years old, you hold his hand, he will feel very embarrassed. At 25 years old, you'll be at that end with a girlfriend and you are struggling at this end trying to catch up. So, 是这样的了. If you can adapt to it, fine. You can't adapt to it, we suffer. Okay? 是这样的了. So, now, if life was suffering, where would you look for an end to suffering? No way, isn't it? But it is not, luckily. If life is suffering, you'll be left with nothing but death in annihilation. But the actual truth is that it is clinging, which is suffering. Pancha upadana khanda. So you simply have to look for the clinging and eliminate the causes. So you accept that your boy is growing up, that he feels embarrassed holding mommy's hand at 15, and that's fine. But if you insist, then both suffer. He suffer, you suffer. Okay? Please go and read this yourself. Okay? Now, that's Ajahn Chah's teaching, which I will fast forward. When dukkha arises, we call that suffering. When dukkha ceases, we call it happiness. Right? Now, I always use the example of a toothache. How many of you, when you had a toothache, curse and swear? I have a student on Sunday called me and said, Doctor, I'm looking for a dentist. I said, that Sunday, everybody is closed. Where to find a dentist? But you see, when you have a toothache, wow, that's dukkha. You're willing to do anything to find a dentist to solve it. So finally, she managed to find a dentist who was open on Sunday. But I say, what about all the times when you don't have a toothache? Are we ever grateful for that? No, we are not. Okay? We are not. Now, so dukkha arises and ceases, we pounce on it, we catch hold of it. Happiness appears and we are pleased. Then unhappiness appears, we are distraught. But it's all arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. That's what meditation teaches us. Okay? So, last part. Dukkha refers to the psychological experience, sometimes conscious, sometimes not conscious, of the profound fact that everything is impermanent, ungraspable, and some not really knowable. On some level, we understand it, but to put it into practice is difficult. The great and beautiful secret of meditation practice is this: you can experience dukkha with equanimity. That means now when you walk in a shopping mall, if your 15-year-old son holds your hand, I'm very, very happy. If my 15-year-old son feels embarrassed because of his friends and not want to hold my hand, I understand. Then you don't suffer. It is with wisdom that you understand. Come on, you were 15 years old once, right? Now, when I walk in the shopping malls, I always hold my wife's hand, because if not, she'll go shopping. It's for very good economic reasons. Singapore is too expensive. In Johor Bahru, I don't have to hold her hand. I say, go and shop. So if you try to eliminate dukkha, as I said, if you try to stop a fan by sticking your hand out, your hand is going to get chopped off. So please don't eliminate dukkha by going and stick your hand up. You eliminate dukkha by eliminating the cause of dukkha, which is what the Buddha explained. Okay? I already told you about the first noble truth, and here it is repeated in Pali as well. The first noble truth states that birth is dukkha. Old age is dukkha. Sickness is dukkha. Death is dukkha. Association with the dislike is dukkha. Separation from the beloved is dukkha. Not obtaining one wishes is dukkha. In short, the clinging to the 5 aggregates. That means clinging to the body, to the feeling, to the volition, to the memory, to the consciousness is dukkha. Okay? The first noble truth does not deny the reality of our pleasures. That's why it says, it should be noted that the first noble truth does not make irrational statements such as association with the beloved is suffering. No, it says dissociation with the beloved is suffering. We may reason that being separated from the loved is inevitable. So it is kind of pleasure like a honeyed bulb. It is kind of pleasant, but one day it will hurt. Nevertheless, the first noble truth does not deny the reality of that pleasure. Okay? Now, there is no such thing as the 5 clinging aggregates, because the 5 aggregates do not cling. The translation is clinging to the 5 aggregates is dukkha. The entire problem of suffering is summarized as this: birth, death, everything else is only dukkha when there is clinging. So this is what we learn to let go, slowly, progressively. Okay. I'm Ho, 9:15. I'm going to stop here for tonight. Tomorrow night we will carry on to the next aspects, and that is this. Tomorrow night we are going to talk about this. Okay, this is a very difficult topic. I've sent the homework to you all. Please try and read it before you come. Then it makes my explanation here a little bit easier. All right? Thank you. Awesome. 1. Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Dr. Wong, you want to take?
Besides, stop 15 minutes.
Okay. Maybe we will stick to 3 questions. Whoever's most urgent to ask, hands up. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Very profound. Okay, the earlier part of the lecture, you talk of the Buddha being a normal human being, which means that anything which is described in the canon, which sounds not human, is not true. Is that correct? For example, I think he walks on water, he sits on the mother's tummy when he was born, and he can, can travel back 91 eons. That's also quite superhuman, is it?
Okay, let me put it this way. There are only very, very few records in the canon of the Buddha when he was a child. Okay, let me read to you. Okay. The records of him as a child were 1, the rose apple tree, when he meditated underneath the rose apple tree. 2, the 3 things that he saw, and I will read to you. I was delicate, most delicate, supremely delicate. Lily pools were made for me at my father's house solely for my benefit, etc., etc. I had 3 palaces that you all know. Okay? And then he said, while I had such power and good fortune, yet I thought, when an untaught ordinary man who is subject to aging, the fact that he said this means he obviously saw aging. Okay? No, you won't make a statement like that. When an untaught ordinary man who is subject to aging, not safe from aging, sees another who is aged, he is shocked, humiliated, and disgusted, for he forgets that he himself is no exception. Then it is repeated, when an untaught ordinary man who is subject to sickness, and then when an untaught ordinary man who is subject to death. So obviously he saw these 3 aspects in his life. So the canonical records of him as a child were very, very little. Okay? Walking on water, miracles, the fire and the water above Kapila Vastu, that is in the biographies of the Buddha, like Buddha Vamsa. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how to put it, the Buddha Vamsa is in the Kuddara Nikaya. Okay? So a lot of people take it as canonical. But it is actually written hundreds of years after the Buddha has passed away. So we have to realize that much of this was written to impress people. Now, what about within the canon? Are there really ridiculous things within the canon? If you go from Anguttara Nikaya, which is basically records of short talks of the Buddha, there is very little editing. You go to Samyutta Nikaya, still there's relatively little editing. Then you go to Majjhima Nikaya, there's more editing. Then when you go to Digha Nikaya, there's a lot of editing. That's why in the Digha Nikaya, you have one sutta which describes the features of the Buddha. Okay? Now, if you look at that sutta, and you look at those features of the Buddha, he doesn't look like a human being at all. He will look like some alien who came from some other planet. So most of us look at that and say, this is really Steven Spielberg effect. Okay? The Digha Nikaya has lots and lots of editing, and that nobody denies. Okay? So as to what brother said, those things which we consider as out of the ordinary, miraculous and all that, in the canon, if you look at the, other than the Digha Nikaya, they are far and in between. There is very little. In fact, what is described in that is a very human person. But I agree, in Digha Nikaya there are some. For example, what we just described, the Lakhana Sutta, all his features. But many people think that those features were put in because they were trying to convince the Indian people of that era who believed that a Superman must have all these features. And so it was really like selling to you what you want to hear. So as far as I'm concerned, when I read the canon, when I read the Buddha's teachings, I see a very human person. And as I tell Brother Posing, who shared with me once when he went to pilgrimage, how the fellow was describing about mango tree on top of that, and he in fact felt disgusted. And I agree with him. I say, if the guy had told me the same thing, I would also feel disgusted, because those things simply don't hold water. Nowadays, as I say, we have to be very careful. Even the 4 sites, I do not tell young people. Because if we are to turn around and say, hey, come on, man, Dr. Wong, you mean to tell me you're 29 years old, you never saw somebody grow older? You never even had a flu? That's not right. Right? But if you look at this, he obviously seen people who were sick. He's obviously seen people who were ill. So when we teach our young people now, we have to be careful. Don't lose credibility on Saturday mornings. All right? Because one of the issues with the traditional way of promoting Buddhism is that people look at it as a lot of fairy tales and superstitions. When in the Buddha Dharma, as taught by the Buddha, there is no superstition. All right?
Next.
I want all my Metal Lodge siblings to raise their hands. Please raise your hands. Because Brother Vincent is looking out for you all. Vincent, where are you? Oh, now he's gone outside. Okay, he's trying to figure out where you are seated. Okay, so please look for Brother Vincent. Yes, Metal Lodge people, raise your hand. Okay. Okay. We still have 2 more nights.
No
Do you
questions?
find this useful? Shocking? In a way. Yes, Dr. Henry.
Assuming that the Buddha didn't exist, everything said was fiction, but the teachings would still hold true.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And this was supposedly from Changi prison. I don't know how true. It's again one of those urban legends that you had this English pastor who was incarcerated in Changi prison with this Buddhist venerable. And of course in prison, you sit there, you look at each other every day. Okay, one man was meditating, one man was praying very fervently. And then of course they would talk in the prison cell. And being people of the rope, they were given a nice cell for the two of them to share. And so in part of the conversation, apparently, the pastor said, with all my prayers, etc., if one day someone is to prove that Jesus did not rise from the dead, or that he didn't exist at all, if someone is to prove it, or somebody finds the bones of Jesus, then the whole thing will collapse. Then he asked the venerable, what about you? What if somebody found that the Buddha did not exist? Will everything collapse? And the venerable replied, even if somebody found he didn't exist, it makes no difference. Because all that is taught are experiential truths. Truths that you can verify for yourself. That things are impermanent. That things are ceaselessly changing. That things are unsatisfactory. That the cause of our pain is because of our attachment. You can verify all of that yourself. In fact, one of the hallmarks of the Buddha Dharma is ehipassiko. The Buddha said you must verify it for yourself, not because you heard it from me, but because you have seen it, analyzed it. Lots of adjectives are used, contemplated on it, meditated on it, reflected on it, discussed on it, and you have found it to be true. Then only you accept it. All right? So I think that's one of the beautiful things about the Buddha Dharma, that the teacher himself invited you to challenge him. There was one time when the Buddha was teaching about Nama and Rupa to a group of monks. Sariputta was there. And then after that, any questions? As usual, like in a true Asian audience, nobody dare ask any question, because in our culture, it would be considered very disrespectful to challenge the teacher. Then he asked, nobody asked question. Just like, on the day when he was dying, he asked, any question? After loose face, they asked question. So nobody asked. Then the Buddha asked Sariputta, do you agree with what I have taught your brother monks? And what did Sariputta say? Only when I have shown it to be true by myself, sir. Now, any other religious teacher would have excommunicated this student. But the Buddha turned around and told all the rest, this is the spirit that you all must have. Do not surrender your intellect. Please verify for yourself. Besides, the free thinkers are the best Buddhists, because you are free to think.
Last question.
Don't go, I must take a photo with you. My wife thinks I'm eating with Vincent. Seafood and all that. We must have a photo before I go. I have to show documentary evidence. Thank you. Yes, brother.
Dr. Wong, regarding those extraordinary, according to what I've read, is like Buddha always, when surveying what's going on, then he decide what to do. So, just like how he go to Angulimala is something extraordinary.
Yes, psychic powers from meditation.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That is something that...
Those are the things you attain when you meditate. And even many venerables, even today who are alive, apparently have such powers.
Yeah, that is something like talk about just now. There's something miraculous about.
It's miraculous because we don't understand how it works.
Okay.
When we understand how it works, then it will not be miraculous. But these are like quantum physics. You know, in quantum physics, when you do an experiment, the famous slit experiment, when you observe it, it behaves in a certain way. When you do not observe it, it behaves in another way. So the presence of consciousness affects the results. So there are many things like that in science. And in meditation, people who have reached deep states of stillness apparently can do wonderful things like that. All right? Yes.